All right. Who needs?
Yeah, I got one. Yeah, I got returning. So returning that. That's one I'm returning. No. Still.
Anybody else need one?
No, that's the first one.
That's recorder.
Yeah, don't worry. Okay, good morning everybody. So last shiur which we gave was an introduction to Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, and we spoke about his understanding of mitzvot and how he built up his Sefer HaMitzvot, the commandments, all the Taryag mitzvot. And now we're going to a new stage of Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon. Now, in order to understand, we're going to do with two concepts today. The first one, the second one, relates to his Siddur. He was actually one of the first people who designed for us a Siddur, Tefillah. But before we get to that, we're going to speak another concept. What was in the Jewish world then? Let's try to understand, what did the Jewish world have? They had Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud. They had Yerushalmi, the Israeli, which wasn't learnt at all. And there was a void. And the first thing which he does, in order to allow Jewish people to live together, was legal documentation. What do we mean by legal documentation? We all know, Erev Pesach, what do we do? Chiras Chometz. What is the document of Chiras Chometz? What is the document of a ksuba? Etc., etc., etc. How's it written? How's it written? What is it? Now, the first person who actually created a book like this, which we knew of, which was known until the last generation, was a very famous book called the Nachalat Shiva. Line number 5. Okay? Rabbi Shmuel Reb David Moshe Halevi Segal, who was born, Nolad in Mezerich, which you all know famous for, in Poland in 1625. And he passed away in 1681. And he wrote a book called Nachalat Shiva. And line number 9, Sheboliket, where he created, collected, Nuschaot, Shitrei Ktubot Vegitin. What is a proper ksuba? What is a proper get? Shitrei Mechira V'halva'a. What is the document of selling land, borrowing? Tzavaot, wills. Modaot, where a person says, if a person forces me to go back on what I've written, it's not included. Imezber mefurat lekol shtar. An explanation of every one of these legal documents. This became the classic book, the Nachalat Shiva, of documentation, legal documentation. Now, it doesn't appear in the Rambam. It didn't appear even in Shulchan Aruch. The Rambam, for instance, has got a nusach of a ksuba. He's got a nusach of a get. But going down, and anybody goes to the museums, one of the things which you'll see there is photographs of ksubas. Okay? And it's one of the things which I love to do is to look at the ksubas. I love looking at them because it gives us an indication of what went on at that period.
Are these ketubot filled in?
Filled in. Go to the Hebrew Museum, just around the corner from here, and you see pictures, original manuscripts of ksubas. It's amazing. It's fascinating. Okay, for instance, the Taimani ksubas, Moroccan ksubas, Spanish ksubas, French ksubas. It's quite amazing. Everybody's got a different nusach. Everyone.
How about American?
What?
American.
Okay, could be. Most probably were.
American is the same thing.
No.
Ashkenaz, Sephardi.
Exactly, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, etc., etc. Okay, for instance, if you go, anybody seen a Sephardic ksuba at all? Anybody seen a Sephardic ksuba? What? You have. What's written there? You don't know, okay? Okay, a true Sephardic ksuba.
I have a ksuba from my great-great-grandfather.
Right, where was he from?
Holland.
Holland. Well, that depends which part of Holland you were. Whether it's the Ashkenazi side or the Sephardi side.
Spanish side.
What?
Spanish
Spanish-Portuguese. Okay? Now, if you've been to the Spanish-Portuguese shul in Amsterdam? Yeah, you see the whole gamut and how they were developed and the influence of the Ashkenazi, okay, Rabbonim, who came to become the rabbi of the Spanish-Portuguese shul. It's quite amazing. And the changes which took place. It's quite amazing. Now, so that is the story of documentation. Now, what happened was, there's a famous professor in Bar Ilan, Professor Yossi Rivlin. He wrote a fascinating article. And there he wrote the following. Line number 15. Kvar bitkufat haga'onim נכתבו שטרי שטרות. נכתבו ספרי שטרות. Books of the legal documentation. כך שרדו מהגניזה הקהירית. The Cairo גניזה, ספר שטרות של רבנו סעדיה גאון. וספר שטרות של רב חי גאון. What did they find in the Cairo גניזה? The legal documentation of the books of Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon and Rab Hai Gaon. They never had it. It wasn't known. In a way, the full book, they had snippets of it, which we'll see later on. They had snippets of the documents of Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, but the full book they never had until they discovered the Cairo Geniza in what year was it, Michael? 1880, something like that. Okay? ערך מעשי יש לרב, לספרים הללו, שכן הגאונים שילבו בנוסחאות השטר, הוראות הם הורו לסופרים כיצד לשנב את הנוסחה. What is the true nusach? What language do we use? Lawyers. מתי יש להשתמש בנוסח זו ומתי בחברתה? So therefore, the original documents took place in the period of the Gaonim. We don't find it in Talmud Bavli. The only nusach which we have in the Talmud Bavli is a get. A get which a man gives to his wife, chas v'chalila, when they get divorced. But that is the only nusach, and even that, in the end of Masechet Gittin, is different versions, because there was huge machloikus, what to write. And it's very, very interesting, in the Talmudic Encyclopedia, there was this, in America, they wanted to begin to translate a get into English. It was a huge controversy, whether you should translate a get. Huge controversy. Translated into English.
To use it?
To use it, yes. To use it. To use a translation of a get. What? Huge controversy. Okay? Eventually, the Rabbonim said no, because even the nusach which we have of a get is problematic. And therefore they didn't change it because it's a din of the Gemara what to use.
Is the get is the only star which is in that Torah?
Pardon?
Is the get the only star which is?
Yes. And we learn a hekesh. We learn, the Gemara says that you can use, we learn from Gittin, because there it's written, the Katav v'natan la, Sefer Kritut, the Torah comes and tells us, and we learn it also for Shtar Kiddushin. Okay, Ksuba is not from the Torah, Machloket between Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and the Chachomim, whether Ksuba is Minat Torah or not. Mohar Betulot, whether it's Dioraisa Drabonon. Okay? Now, and what we're going to study now is the introduction which they found in the Cairo Gniza of Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon. His introduction. It was printed, as you can see, in a book called Sinai. It's a kovetz. It's a what's a kovetz? What? Periodical. Thank you. A periodical which came out in Tafshin Gimel in 1943 in Israel. They translated it already from Arabic. Okay, they translated what they found in the Geniza Kahir, and this, because all what Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon was written in Arabic, the book documentation, legal documentation is written in Arabic, because he wrote it in Arabic. And what we're going to do is we're going to learn his introduction, because it's an amazing introduction. And we're going to he uses these concepts in this introduction to his famous book called Emunot V'Dayot, Beliefs and Faiths and Knowledge, also written in Arabic. Now, Targum B'Shimcha Rachmana, a translation. What?
When was Arabic as a language developed?
In what?
Because I would have thought
in the 700s, 600s, 700s.
No?
700s already they spoke Arabic in Babylon.
In Baghdad.
Yeah. His books were written in Arabic, Hebrew Arabic.
700?
Yeah, Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon was 800s approximately. End of 700s, beginning of 800s.
I thought it was before. Okay.
Yeah. Targum B'Shimcha Rachmana, Sefer Ha'idut V'Ashtarot, the book of testimonies and documents, Mima Shechiber Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, Amar HaMaasef, the person who gathered them all together. Zeu Chelek Michelkei Halacha. This is parts of the book of Halacha. Asher Ani Mitkonen Lechabra, which I intend writing, gathering together. Aval Akdim Chelek Zeh, I want to give an introduction. Mishum Ra'iti et Godel Tzorech Ha'uma Lo. Why Am Yisrael needed it. V'yadati, and I know, Otzem HaTo'elet Shad Tagia La Bo. And I knew the need for it, the great need for it, which people need. What's it going to help them with? Now comes the introduction, which is quite amazing. V'amar b'ptichato, and he said in his introduction, Yitbarach Hashem Elokei Yisrael, shehu ha'emet habrucha. Kodesh Baruch Hu is the absolute truth. V'asa et ha'emet lanisgava shebayediot. And he made, from this truth, he created this truth as the most important knowledge, lanisgava, exalted, idiot. V'nei ha'emet hi mesheyakum b'sechel hashalem mikol pega. And this truth is what a person can absorb in his mind. Now take note of the three truths which Rabbi Saadia Gaon uses. First one, emet shehu ha'emet habrucha. Absolute truth, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The next one is Va'asa, and he made the truth into knowledge, which is the Torah. And he gives man the ability to understand this truth using his seichel. 3 concepts of truth Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon uses: God, Torah, man. Seichel, ability to understand. Now, v'nitbarer b'nefesh hanoheget lepiv, and it becomes clear in the soul of the person who behaves this way. V'gadar zeh im mashu muskam ben hachachamim amar alav hakatuv kulam nechochim lamevin. All these things are clear to the person who understands. V'yesharim lemotzei dat, and authentic to those who understand things. Pasuk in Sefer Mishlet. So now we have 3 truths: Kadosh Baruch Hu, Torah, man's ability to understand. Now, he's the first one who defines this. The first one who actually gives us absolute definitions. You won't find language like this in the Gemara because Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon was already influenced by philosophy. And he translates terms of midrashim, chazalim, into philosophical terminology.
Which philosophy was he exposed to?
Arabic philosophy. Now, I'm not an Arabic. I don't understand Arabic, but already at that time the great Arab philosophers and the Greek philosophers, which they had translated from Greek to Arabic, he knew it. Okay? Remember, he was born in Egypt, so in Egypt already they were the influx of Greek philosophers. Now, we're going to compare this to language of the Rambam. The language of the Rambam, not in Moreh Nevuchim, the guide to the perplexed, but Mishneh Torah. And how does the Rambam introduce the concept of a God? Okay, says the following. Says the Rambam, Shekol HaNimtzaim, all what is in the world need him, tzrichim lo. V'hu baruch hu eino tzarich lahem. God, Kadosh Baruch Hu, doesn't need them. V'lo le'echad mehem. Lefichach ein amitato, his truth, his existence, kamitat achad mehem. Hu sha'anavi omer v'Hashem Elokim emet. This is the first time the concept of truth is related to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, take note. What do we say at the end of Shema? למען תזכרו את השם ולאס גאון מצוותיי וישם קדושים לכם, אני השם אלוקיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני השם אלוקיכם. There's no such pasuk. Doesn't exist. What we say Hashem Elokeichem emes is not a pasuk. It's what is written at the end of Shema, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Look in Sefer Bamidbar, you will see. It's written Ani Hashem Elokeichem. What did the Masechet Sofrim, the time of the Tanaim, create for us? No. Hashem Elokeichem emes. What is the source of this pasuk? The source of this pasuk is a pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyahu. Hu Hashanavi Omer Hashem Elokim Emet. This is the source of the connection between Emes, truth, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You don't find it anywhere else in the whole of the corpus of the Tanakh. The word Emes relating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Isn't that strange?
What?
Throughout the thousands of years of history until then, that only happened then? It's weird.
Why is it weird?
It seems to us that it's kind of obvious, no?
Because when was the word Emes created? What is it? What's the source of the word Emes?
Where does that appear?
Where does that appear?
Yeah.
Okay? That's a big problem.
Doesn't appear anywhere in the Tanakh?
No?
The word
The
itself.
emes appears in Tanakh. There, in Sefer Yirmiyahu. I'll read you out the pasuk. Okay? Just like you should believe me. Okay?
Does it appear in the
The
Torah?
pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyahu is the following.
I can't think of a single time where Amos appears in the Torah. It appears in other Nevi'im.
Pardon?
Does Amos appear in the Torah anywhere?
No. As far as I remember,
It does
no.
appear in other Nevi'im.
It appears in other Nevi'im. Okay? It's a pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyahu, Perek Yud, pasuk Yud. That's the source of it.
Yod,
Okay.
Yod, interesting.
Pardon?
Yod, very interesting.
Okay. But that's the connection between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the world of Emes. And the Rambam says, and that's why the Rambam, believe me, if he would have found a pasuk in the Torah, he would have found it. Hu Shanavi Omer, this is exactly what Yirmiyahu says, Vashem Elokim Emes. And from there, we learn to connect up Hashem Elokechem Emes. That is the connection. Says the Rambam, Hu levado ha'emet. He is the absolute truth. Ve'ein la'acher emet ka'mitato. V'hu. Now the Rambam says, what is the source of this concept in the Torah? Einod milvadoi. Who says that?
Moshe.
Moshe Rabbeinu. Well done. Moshe Rabbeinu says that. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't speak about himself in the Torah. All he says is, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. But descriptions of who HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or what is his identity, only Moshe Rabbeinu speaks about that. Moshe Rabbeinu in Sefer Dvarim speaks about man's perception of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But how does HaKadosh Baruch Hu perceive himself, in inverted commas, if you can use concepts like that? Very, very rarely. Remember, the whole of the Torah is written in third person. Bereshis Bo Elokim. It is like a perception of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. But what is the perception of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself? Very, very rarely will you find it. Let me just find, where's the Tanakh? Let me just, here, this is Chumash on it. Yeah. Okay? Now, let me give you one indication of an inverted commas HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking about himself, so to speak, if you can use like this. Says the following. Right. V'Hashem amar, hamechase ani me'Avraham asher ani oseh. Am I going to hide things? Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses, so to speak, the narrator of the Torah. Who is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Speaks in first person. Hamechase ani me'Avraham et asher ani oseh. My perception of myself is I can't hide things from Avraham Avinu. Why? Etc., etc. Now this is a perception of HaKadosh Baruch Hu about himself. You very rarely find in the Torah a reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. 13 Midot is one of them, but again, there it's written, Hashem Hashem Kel Rachum V'Chanun. It's not HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking, but, so to speak, he tells Moshe to say, Vayikra, Vayavor Hashem al panav, Vayikra, Hashem 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 Kel Rachum V'Chanun. Now, who is the Vayikra there? Oh.
Yeah, for Rav Chesed V'Emet.
Now, there it's Rav Chesed V'Emet, but that's not about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's own existence, but how he runs the world. Correct? Yeah. Let's go over it again, what I've just said to you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's perception, Vayavor Hashem al panav, Vayikra. Who is Vayikra there? Is there a Chumash, is there a Rashi there? Let me just show you. Very important. I need a Chumash with Rashi. Is it behind you?
Two ways to read it.
Where they have their conventions.
Outside there, Chumash.
Gracious, right? Shmos, I mean. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, וירד השם בענן ויתייצב עם מושם ויקרא בשם השם ויעבור השם על פניו ויקרא. Says Rashi, ויקרא בשם השם מתרגמינן וקרא בשמה דשם. Now Rashi is forced to say, who is ויקרא? HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls out, Moshe Rabbeinu calls out in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore Vayikra is really Moshe Rabbeinu repeating the words of who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. But the self-reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very, very rare in the Torah. Hareini nait kvodecha. Moshe Rabbeinu asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu, show me your honor. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, don't look at me. You can't see me.
But a couple of psukim earlier it says, Hashem says, the karati b'shem Hashem.
Who is I agree with you, okay? Vayavor Hashem al panav vayikra, okay? It's written the following, okay? Vayered Hashem be'anan vayityasev v'mosham vayikra b'shem Hashem. Who is vayikra there? Moshe. Right. Okay, so therefore very rarely do we have a reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu about himself. It is a perception of human beings, ein od milvadoi. Moshe Rabbeinu says that.
The mentioning of Emet there seems to be already a connection between Hashem and Emet.
Your existence versus your behavior. It's two different things. I am who I am, and then how do I relate to other people? Is my behavior with integrity? Rav Chesed ve'emes. What is Hashem Hashem? What is Shlosh Esrei Midot? How HaKadosh Baruch Hu behaves towards other people. That's the emes there. But my existence is also truth. I know that I exist. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how does HaKadosh Baruch Hu translate this? In inverted commas, we don't know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's actual existence. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu says, in his perception, Einoid milvadoi. There's nobody like him, in inverted commas. Okay? And what does how does Yirmiyahu translate this concept of Einod milvadoi? Hashem Elokim Emet. That's what the Rambam says. Hu Navi Omer, line number 35. Hu Navi Omer, Vashem Elokim Emet. His existence is absolute truth. Hu levado ha'emet, ve'ein la'acher emet ka'amitato. You can't explain this truth in any other way. V'hu sha'Torah omeret, ein od milvado, there's nothing else besides the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. Klomar, ein sham matsui emet milvado k'moto. The impact of Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon on the Rambam. What is he says? Yitbuhamar b'ptichato yitbarach Hashem Elokei Yisrael shehu ha'emet habrucha. The first emes. Second emes is v'asa et ha'emet lanisgava shebayediot. Torah. What do we say in the translation of the 13 principles of faith? Torat emet natan la'amo kel. Or asher natan lanu torat emet. Okay? The Torah becomes the absolute truth. Again, you don't have it in the Torah.
You translate Torah Emet as the Torah of Emet.
Torah of Emet.
No, I mean the Torah of Hashem is Emet.
Or you can use it many, many ways. But you can't say Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet. You can't say that. But the first one you can say. Okay? So that is emes of the Torah. And now, what is this human being of our seichel? Okay, because what did he say? Line number 25. V'hinei ha'emet hi meshayakum b'seichel hashalem mikol pega. Man's ability to understand without any other influences around him. Person's seichel. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce this concept of Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon by the introduction of one of the greatest commentaries on Shulchan Aruch. It was written by Rabbi Aryeh Leib HaKohen, who lived in the late 1700s. He wrote a Perush on Choshen Mishpat called Ktsot HaChoshen. He was prolific, one of the greatest. Anybody who learns in yeshiva knows the Ktsois. Okay, Ktsois HaChoshen, Avnei Miluim, Shef Shemaitza. But he wrote a fascinating introduction, and one of the things which I try to teach people is always learn introductions. Always. Because the introductions give us an insight into who the person is who is writing. Just like Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon does here. What do I want to introduce? Now, the Ktsot says the following. Uva Midrash Breishis Rabbah. The Midrash in Breishis Rabbah. Rabba Amar Rabbi Simon. B'shah sheratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu libro et ha'adam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create man. Nasu malachei asharet kitot kitot. There are whole groups of angels. Mehem omrim yibara. Some of the angels said, yeah, let's create man. Umehem omrim, no, don't create him. Shneimar, chesed ve'emet nifgashu. Truth and kindness met. Chesed omer yibara. Shikulo malei chasadim. Man has got compassion. Man has got kindness. Correct.
Will have when I create.
Will have or can have. He is kulo maleh. Okay. Ve'emet omer lo yibara. Shekulo maleh shkarim. It's full of lies. Man lives in a contradiction. Kindness versus truth. Integrity. Ma'asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? What? Natal emet ve'shlicha arza. Throws truth down to the ground. Shenemar v'tishlach emes arza. Amru lefanav, Ribono shel olam, ata mavazeh tachshit shelcha. You are throwing away your own jewelry, your identity. What are you throwing truth down to the world for, if you know it won't exist? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ritzoni shetale emet min haaretz. I want people to uplift this truth.
What? People to do what?
To uplift, to create truth, to create integrity, to create objective truths. Now, says the Ktsot, V'hainu mishum diyadua, T'seichel ha'adam yil'eh la'asig ha'emet, B'yoto ba'aretz shorsho. Man has a very hard, it's very, very complicated for him to create the truth. Why? Because he's made from adama, from ground. ולזה אמרו, אתה מבזה תכשיט שלך, כיוון שעיקר הבריאה עבור התורה, והאדם בשכלו האנושי, מהנמנע להשיג האמת האמיתי. Man doesn't have the ability to get to this absolute truth. וכאשר יתנהג העולמות כולם מעלמא ועד עלמא על פי תורת האדם, לא יהיה על פי האמת. Nothing will be true. הרי אתה מבזה תכשיט שלך. ועל זה השיב הקדוש ברוך הוא, זה רצוני, שתעלה אמת מן הארץ, והאמת יהיה כפי הסכמת החכמים בשכל האלושי. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from us? He wants man to develop his own truths.
He wants men to do what?
He wants man to develop these truths. I don't want you to lie. I want you to use your brain. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, has given man his capability of creating truths, following the format of the Torah, and using, reading, understanding, and creating his truths.
Can I just ask that?
1 minute, let me just finish. V'zehu birchat haTorah, asher natan lanu Torat emet, sheyeh ha'emet itanu, v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us this ability to use our brain, our seichel, we have the ability to continue the chayei olam. The Torah will always be there. That, says the Ketzot, is the concept of HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us the ability. He's not saying there will always be absolute truths, but the format of truth exists within man. So who is man? Okay, who is man? Is he Adamah? Is he soil? Or is he Adameh? Compared. Same word. Adamah versus Adameh. Adameh is I've got a comparison to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Or is he on the ground? Who is man? Adamah versus Adameh, Lekel Elyon. And the battle of man is exactly how he's going to use his seichel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't expect from man to be like himself. No, doesn't stand a chance. But he's given man this ability. Pure. He's got this ability, integrity, truth, etc. And that's exactly what Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon says in line number 25. V'inei ha'emet hi ma sheyakum b'sechel hashalem mikol pega. Guys, try to be objective. Don't let external emotions, etc., etc., break down your logic. And the whole of what man exists is the balance between his physical needs, spiritual needs, etc., etc. And that's why he carries on. V'nitbarer b'nefesh hanoheget lepiv. If a person follows this Torah, shehu muskam bein hachachamim, which is agreed upon between the chachamim, that means follow what your brain and follow what you've been taught, and use your brain to understand what you have been taught and what have you learnt. And that is the pasuk kulam nechochim lamevin. Everything is true to the person who understands. Visharim l'motzei dat. That's the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech. And that is how Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon introduces his book. 3 truths: God, Torah, man. Questions? Yes.
When you say before about man having the capability of creating truth, it sounds more to me like Hashem, the man has the capability of revealing God's truth,
100%.
not his own truth.
No, it's God's truth and his own truth. Because if he identifies with it, then it's correct. You can have a great philosopher, but do you identify with your truths? Do you behave like your truths, etc., etc.? Now, that is the introduction. 3 concepts of truth: Baruch Hu, Torah, man. Next, Rav Shira Gaon. Now let's go back to the legal documents. Line number 55 in the Tshuvot of the Gaonim. Rav Shira, v'shesha'altem matzinu b'sefer shtarot shetiken Rav Saadia Gaon. You have found, this is written 200 years approximately, 150 years after Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon wrote his book. Rav Shreya Gaon, one of the last of the Gaonim, says, we found in the book of documents. That means they had it. Let's go next stage. Says the Ramban. We're not going into the legal details of all this. Okay? Says the Ramban. Aval echad mi rabotai, in the end of number 60, echad mi rabotai shamati, she'omer mishum ha'gaon Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, shetofes hashtarot v'nuschan lichtov, etc., etc. The Ramban had it. They had snippets of this book of Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon. Let's give ourselves another example. A ksuba of a yevama. Now, what's the problem? As far as the Torah is concerned, there is a mitzvah of yibum. A brother will marry the widow of his brother. What sort of ksuba is written here? Okay? And shtar, line number 76, ushtar ktubat yivama, ketzad. How is it written? Ani ploni ben ploni, kibalti yivamti. I've received the yivama, my sister-in-law. Da'alai lezuna ulefarnasa, because the Torah commanded him. So it's not his own free will, he's got to do it because it's a mitzvah. So she could do chalitza, but he's got a mitzvah of yibum. So what does he write in the ksuba? I have been commanded by Kodesh Baruch Hu to marry my yivama, and what? And I've got to feed her and sustain her. V'chein katav Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon b'sefer shtarot. So Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon wrote all the shtarot which existed. Every one. Okay, obviously not Mechiras Chometz, because Mechiras Chometz didn't apply in his time. They never did it. But I'm saying, the legal documentation of the Jewish people, Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon felt need to do it. Revolution. Nobody had ever done it until Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon. From the period of the Gemara, which again, the Gemara doesn't tell us what it was, so we don't know, we don't have any official documentation from the end of the Gemara in the year 500 until Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon. A revolution, complete revolution, legal documentation. Next, the Siddur. Guys, one of our biggest problems is Rabbi Yehuda HaNossi never wrote us a Siddur. You won't find any nusach of the Siddur. What to say? You'll have the order of Shmona Esrei. That's a Gemara in Masechet Brachot and a Gemara in Masechet Megillah. Certain number of brachos. But what do you say? What is the build-up of the Siddur? We've got it nowadays. What do we say? Birchas HaShachar, Psukei D'Zimra, Birchas Kriyat Shema, etc., etc. When was this created? This format?
Did Ezra do it?
What?
Did Ezra do it?
Ezra.
Ezra?
No. Ezra didn't create for us Psukei D'Zimra. All the Gemara says, the only place you've got in the Gemara is that it said you've got to say Ashrei 3 times a day. That's it, finished. Gemara in Brochos. Baruch She'omar, you won't find in the Gemara. Yishtabach, you won't find in the Gemara. You won't find anything. There is certain parts in a sefer called Masechet Sofrim, which appears at the end of Gemara, Masechet Oktanot, which appears at the end of Gemara Ben Avodah Zorah. It's called Masechet Sofrim. There's the laws of Kriyas HaTorah, etc., etc. But the actual framework of it, you won't find. Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon was one of the first ones.
They didn't, at the time of Rabbi Yosef, they didn't daven.
We don't know what they davened.
Like
We didn't.
just don't know.
We don't know. We don't know what they davened.
They probably didn't.
I wasn't there. You weren't there. Nobody was there. Okay.
Sure you were, you just don't remember.
Now, what?
You just don't remember.
Right.
You were in Har Sinai too, but you don't remember that.
If you want to accept the medrash which says that our neshamas were there, etc., etc., all well and good. But that's if you want to believe in Gilgal and Neshama. If you were okay, if you had Mizrach there, all well and good. Right.
Because I'm one of the Torani.
Okay, right.
I was thinking the fact 12 copies for my name.
Yeah, exactly. You were sending a WhatsApp, a picture of House Muhammad Al Sinai. Yeah, okay.
When was
Right.
the Machzor Vitri compiled, and what was it based on?
Right. The Machzor Vitri was based on, first of all, was written in 1070. It was a pupil of Rashi.
So that's still pretty early.
Exactly, but that's 400 years after Rabbeinu Saadia gone.
So what was it based on?
Oh, you want us to give us the whole history of the Siddur?
Not really, but you're talking about the origin.
The origins, but we're talking about prior to the Machzor Vitri.
Nachon.
Okay? Where did that come from? Okay. Now, let's give ourselves a bit of an introduction. Okay?
But then, what did we have until now?
What?
Introduction.
Okay. Let me give you a classical example. Okay? One of the sources of tefillot appear regarding Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah perhaps is one of the few Chagim where we know the format of tefillah, Malchuyot, Zichronot, Shofarot. Okay? Now, so let me just restart my brain. Okay. Now, one of the biggest machlokas, this will be an answer to you, okay? One of the biggest machlokas which took place is whether Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot was said in every tefillah, Ma'ariv, Shachris, Musaf, Mincha. Okay, because if it's written in the Mishnah, then it should be said in all three tefillot. Machloket number two is whether it was said just by the Shliach Tzibur or was it said by everybody. If you just do it in Musaf, who said it? Was it just the Shliach Tzibur? And the rest of the Tzibur just said what they daven in Shachris.
But it stems from the time of Ezra.
1 minute, wait. Okay. This was a huge machloikas between the Gaonim. The Ramban, and we once used it, we spoke about him Erev Rosh Hashanah. He wrote a fascinating drosha. The drosha of the Ramban on Rosh Hashanah, which appears in Kitvei Ramban, in the writings of the Ramban, the first volume. We spoke about it Erev Rosh Hashanah because we told the story that he said it when he arrived in Eretz Yisrael after he left Barcelona, the big debate in Barcelona. And there he gave this drosha in Akko. He writes it in Akko in front of the great pupils of the Balei HaTosfot. And there he speaks about a machloket which took place in Spain, whether the Shliach Tzibur says Malchuyot, Zichronot, Shofarot, or does everybody say it? The minhag, the original minhag, was says the Ramban, was only the Shliach Tzibur says it, and not the not everybody. But he says the minhag in Spain, which was influenced by the Balei HaTosfot, was that everybody said it.
It requires an incredible amount of knowledge.
Correct. That was one of the correct. That everybody had to know it by heart because they didn't have Sidurim, they didn't have Sforim. Now,
Or Chumashim, these are all
correct. But let me go into the history. One of the great historians, okay, his name was Rabbi Isaac Halevi. He wrote a book called Dorot Rishonim. He speaks about this in great detail. And he says there were two minhagim of tefillot. The Jewish people, after the destruction of the Second Temple, went in two directions. One towards Bavel, and one towards Rome, Italy. The Jews began going towards Europe. The Jews of Eretz Yisrael, those who didn't live in Bavel, went to Europe. And there were two minhagim of tefillas. the minhag of Babylon and the minhag of Eretz Israel. Says Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says in one of his responsa, we, the Ashkenazi Jews in France, have the minhag of Eretz Israel. And the Jews in Babylon have the minhag of Sephardim. Let's go over it again. Rabbeinu Tam says the minhag of our tefillot is based on the minhag of Eretz Israel. The Jews who lived in Eretz Israel at the time of the destruction of the temple went up towards Europe, Rome, Greece, going northwards. Some went to Babel. Two different minhagim. Minhag of Eretz Israel and minhag of Babel. The Spanish Jews meet up. Northern Spain, Christian. Southern Spain, Muslim. Because the Jews of Spain, the Sephardi Jews, go from Babylon and they are forced to run to North Africa, Kirwan, going northwards until they get to Morocco. They are driven by the Al-Khomedim. I'm not a historian, and my Mechutin Michael knows a lot more than this, than me in these things. But we know that the Jews from Babylon, some of them are forced to leave Babylon, going southwards towards Egypt, Tunis, Morocco, eventually going up to Spain. And the most famous one of that is Rabbeinu Yitzchak Al-Fassi. And the Ashkenazi Spanish Jews come from Provence, crossing the Pyrenees and meeting in Barcelona. And Spain becomes the meeting point between the Ashkenazim and the Sephardi Jews. Let me give you another example. The Tur, Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, and now we're just digressing 1 minute. Rabbeinu Yaakov ben Asher runs with his father the Rosh after his Rebbe is put into prison, the Maharam in Rutenburg. And the Rosh, because he's scared of what's going to happen to him, escapes. And he runs with his family the whole way through France, Pyrenees, and meets the great Rav of Barcelona, the Rashba, in Barcelona. And the Rashba offers him the greatest Rav of Germany, the Rosh, meets the greatest Rav of Spain, the Rashba, and the Rashba says, you take over my job here in the Rav of Barcelona. So the Rosh says, don't think, I'm not going to take your job away. And he goes to another place. And Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, the Tur, he's the one who compiles the Tur. And what's so special about the Tur is, he's an Ashkenazi who's met up with a Sephardi. The first time we have a book which compiles the minhag of the Ashkenazim and the minhag of the Sephardim. And let me give you an example, because Rosh Hashanah becomes one of the most important pieces where there's such minhagim. For instance, the Tur quotes a minhag that in Malchuyot, Zichronot, Veshofarot, the minhag of a place called Tulitula, Toledo, was to say Yale v'yavo in Musaf, in Malchuyot, Zichronot, Veshofarot. Because what do we say there in Zichronot? Yale v'yavo v'yizacher Zichronenu Pikdonenu. That's exactly Zichronot. And he says the minhag of Toledo was to say Yale v'yavo in Musaf on Rosh Hashanah. And he said the minhag nachonu. It's a correct minhag, because where else do you say Zichronot, Zichronenu, Pikdonenu more than Rosh Hashanah? But he said we in Ashkenaz never did that. Why? Minhag of Eretz Yisrael. And the minhag of Ovel was to say Yale v'yavo. Those are examples of the different minhagim which take place. And when you learn the Tur, which is a fascinating book, especially Orach Chaim and the laws of Tefillah, where it combines the two different minhagim. Okay, and it's clear that that's what happened. You asked me the Machzor Vitri. The Machzor Vitri in Ashkenazi comes from Minhagei Eretz Yisrael. Minhag of Sfarad is what? Is different. Not completely different, but there were. And we're going to learn about it now. What was the minhag of the Gaonim in Tefillah? Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon, which is one of the earliest. Now, let's carry on. Line number 80. Again, this is from the introduction of the Arabic translation of the introduction of Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon to his Siddur. Okay? וכפי מה שלימדונו חז"ל, ששלושה ברכות הראשונות, the first three brachot of 18, אין בהם אלא שבח. Now, the question was, why 3? Says Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon, ואתה מוצא שמשה רבנו עליו השלום אמר את שלושת הפסוקים הראשונים של השירה כשבח. The first 3 psukim of Shirat Hayam are praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. כי גאו גאה, אשר על השם כי גאו גאה, סוס ורוכבו רמה בים. Second pasuk, עזיב וזמרות יה ויהי לישועה, השם איש מלחמה, השם שמו. Says Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon, this became the source why Chazal chose 3 brachot. The copy of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now this is Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon. Next. וכן אתה מוצא שדוד, אחר 17 תיאורי שבח, באומרו לך השם הגבולה, אמר מודים, ואחר כך ומהללים, והמשך התודה רוצה לומר שים שלום. Why in Modim there are 3 brachot? Because David HaMelech quoted 3 types of thanking Hashem. Let's carry on. ומה שהקדמנו, now, what is the essence of תפילה? ומה שהקדמנו שהתפילה היא בקשה ושאלה מאושר על ידי מה שמוכח מן השכל. Again, what does Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon say? Because what does man need to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for? No, his seichel tells him, I need things. I can't live without certain things. והכתוב מן השכל. כי הרי דיבור העבד לרבו צריך להיות שונה מהדיבור האדון לעבדו. The language which a servant uses towards his master is different from the way the master speaks to the עבד. אבל מה שצריך העבד להגיד לאדוניו הוא שיבקש חסד ורחמים דרך אפיים וסליחה על חטאיו ומחילה על עוונותיו. What does a servant need to thank? He asks chesed, rachamim, erech apayim, forgiveness, mechila, ויודה על חסדים שגמל לו בעבר. You thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for what he's given you. ומשום כך ציווה השם יתברך את המתפללים לבחור במילים כאלה. To choose word like this, שראוי לעבד לבוא בהם לפני רבו. How does HaKadosh Baruch Hu define tefillah? לעובדו בכל לבבכם. The servant. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu expect? What language does he use? The language of an eved towards his master. ומשום כך ציווה הקדוש ברוך הוא את המתפללים לבחור במילים כאלה שראוי לעבד לבוא בהם לפני רבו שנאמר קחו עמכם דברים ויתר הפרשה. וזהו מה שאפשר להביא לראיה מן הכתוב ומהביאור הנמסר מפי נביאי השם עליהם השלום כמו שתיארנו. That is number 1. שבח and bakasha. And that's exactly how the Rambam opens up the world of tefillah. אלא חיוב מצווה זו כך הוא, שיהיה השם מתחנן, שיהיה האדם, מתחנן ומתפלל בכל יום, begging, אוקיי? הוא מגיד שבחו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, ואחר כך שואל צרכיו שהוא צריך להם, ask his needs, בבקשה ובתחינה, ואחר כך נותן שבח והודיה להשם על הטובה שהשפיע לו, and afterwards he thanks הקדוש ברוך הוא. Take note of the concept which Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon uses in the first line. בקשה ושאלה מאושר על ידי משה מוכח מן השכל. What becomes logic? The whole time Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon uses man has to think, man has to understand, man has to perceive who he stands in front of. Next week, next year, we'll carry on with this amazing introduction of Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon.
When is your next year?
Yeah, I don't know. 1 minute. When is the next year? I'll tell you when it is. 1 minute. Hold on. My next year will be on the 8th of December.
Of January.
8th of January, yeah.